Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the podcast. My name is Angela Clement, and I am thrilled and excited to have with me today John Graham. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about John. He is a 3 times USA memory champion, Grandmaster of Memory, entrepreneur, and mentors high performers, including a world record holder. He's a world-class mind and innovator. But his dark secret is that he had to overcome daily panic attacks and chronic anxiety. Mainstream methods such as therapy and meditations and supplements did not work. So he discovered counterintuitive methods to release suppressed emotions and release the control conditioning of his mind to free himself of panic and anxiety for good. So he helps high achievers release their panic attacks and chronic anxiety. And this is at releasepanic.com/free. And we'll talk about that and we'll put that in the description. And he's also a proud husband and father of 3 girls. So thank you again for joining us.
I'm really happy to be here. I love your energy and your vibe in the podcast. So happy to share and dive deep for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm super excited about talking about what you've learned through your process of this amazing journey that you've been on, and then having this anxiety and talking about what that's like, because there's a lot of people out there with it, but I think a lot of us don't understand. And then just what you've learned to get yourself through that, I think is so important. So tell people just a little bit more about yourself before we start.
Yeah, a lot of people assume I'm like a gifted mind, right? Like photographic memory or something, since I'm a memory champion. And it's actually not true at all. 10 years ago, I was 27 years old. I read a book called Moonwalking with Einstein. And the subtitle is what got me. It's called The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. And so I picked up the book. I was a skeptic. I was like, it's talking about ordinary people who can memorize massive amounts of information. Like, they learn techniques, their visualization. They learn, it's like a skill. It's like playing a piano. And I thought, well, okay, I'll try this out. I learned within a week, I learned a system to memorize a deck of cards, like shuffle a deck of cards. And I knew all 52 cards in order after looking at them for like 6 minutes.
Wow.
And I learned that in a week. I was like, okay, this is real. And I just picked it up because it was a lot of fun. It was, a lot of people think memory is very boring. Right? Oh, I just got to review over and over. Well, it's actually a lot of fun because you access the right side of your brain, not just the left. It's a lot of visualization, imagination. Like my imagination at 38 years old is way more powerful than most people. It's probably as good as a 7-year-old. It's like that good.
Wow.
So I just started practicing the techniques, learned how to compete in competitions all over the world. That's where I won my trophies and my awards and was on TV shows, because I just got really, really good at it. I went as far as really anyone can go, to the top levels of speed and accuracy. But along the way, like you mentioned in the intro, I struggled with anxiety. I struggled with pressure specifically. The very first competition I was ever at was the World Championships. It's a 3-day event. There's 10 events. There's hundreds of people from all over the world sitting in a room. The first event is names and faces, and we have, 15 minutes to look at these. My heart is pounding out of my chest the whole 15 minutes. Like, I couldn't handle the voice in my head, the pressure, the psychological. I'd never experienced anything like it. And there were a couple times in that competition I almost walked out. Like, I almost gave up because it was so intense. I couldn't handle that voltage inside of me. And so much of my story now is, how do we handle that voltage, overcome those, those mental demons, or the voice in our head that a lot of people say. And the secret is that it's emotional root issue, not a mental root issue.
Yeah. So that's really interesting when you talk about processing emotion, because in grief, that's like the process is really all about processing all of those emotions that come up through that. And it's part of the healing process. It's a big part of it. but we often aren't taught how to process those emotions. So I'm really interested into digging a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, when you mention grief, a lot of people think, oh, grief is just when someone dies, right? And that's part of it. But we all experience grief. Grief just means loss. It could mean you graduated high school and now you're into college. There's a lot of grief because you're losing your friends, or maybe a friend moved away, or maybe a part of you, like an activity you used to do, you gave up on, or you moved on from, and now you have grief because you miss part of that, or you miss that aspect, or the old times, right? That's all grief, and we all
Mhm.
experience that. It's a tremendous example.
Yeah, for sure. And that definition of grief is expansive. And I think that, what I've learned is that we are given the gift of grief as a process to help us heal from these losses and the change that happens in our life. And part of that process, again, is this emotion that comes up. And I
Yeah.
know just talking about containing that, or somehow, not letting it explode.
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
yeah, this
Well,
is,
when you have anxiety, right, you have a massive amount of suppressed emotions. And I like to give this explanation. I think it's very simple. Any moment, and this is for any human being listening to this, which we're all humans, right? Any moment in your life that you couldn't handle is still inside of you. Any moment you didn't fully process out is still inside of you, because we're meant to allow emotions to just flow through us. That's how we're built, right? If we tense up, or we don't like it, or we push it away, it's still inside of us, and it causes, like, it's like a pressure cooker. At some point, it's going to explode. It's going to get really loud in life. And for me, it turned into daily panic attacks because I was resisting the flow of life, right? I had a lot of things that bothered me. And it wasn't, not I'm a bad person, but we all sort of do this. We suppress things that are uncomfortable, because these emotions are highly, highly, highly uncomfortable. Anger, embarrassment, grief, we all have our cocktail of emotions that we've been through in our lives, right? But like you said, we're supposed to allow it to happen. And as human beings, it's incredibly difficult. And so it builds up over time and causes all these internal issues, not just stress, not just mental health issues, but even physical, ulcers. And I believe further than that, cancers and all of these other diseases that we think are health and diet. Even deeper than that, the root is emotional.
mhm. Yes. Yeah, I absolutely believe that too. Coming from an energy healing background, that makes all kinds of sense. So you talk about how a lot of the mainstream methods maybe worked a bit or helped you for a while, but really didn't get you to that place. How did you get to a place where you could let go of that anxiety for good?
Yeah. Well, I had to hit the deepest depths. Like, I had to hit rock bottom, so to speak. Rock bottom is scary, but it is also the catalyst that we need to change. Many of us aren't listening to the signs in life, like I wasn't. Anxiety is a very visceral sign, like that you're not doing it correctly, or there's something you're missing, right? It should be very visceral. But I, fought and fought and fought and pushed and pushed and pushed things down until it exploded. And so some of the things that I tried are, meditation. Meditation is wonderful, by the way. I'm not saying don't do it. But if something is arising, anxiety, dread, overwhelm, mental paralysis, numbness, anything like that, it's meant to be seen and felt. And as a logical person, I initially hated that. Like, I wanted to just figure things out, move on with my day. I got stuff to do, think. But if stuff is coming up, let's take meditation, for example. If you're feeling anxiety, overwhelmed, like all this tension, all of this physical sensation, and you go and meditate, you're essentially avoiding that feeling. You're bypassing it to go calm down. Even if you go for a walk, or, some people smoke, some people drink, some people do whatever. If you're seeking to feel better in that moment, then you're missing out on the opportunity to release and transmute that emotion, which is what you want. You want it out, and it wants out. but we avoid it and push it back down. So that's why meditation doesn't, quote unquote, work. It sort of kicks the can down the road. It keeps it in because you're not experiencing what you need to be experiencing. So meditation, there's therapy reframes, trying to think positive or digging for the root or like what, asking yourself power questions. That's all cognitive, and we don't want to do anything cognitive because again, the root issue is deeper than that. These will work temporarily, but again, it comes back louder because you're not dealing with the root. Supplements, hypnosis, I tried all that stuff. Only, and to answer your question, I got to the point where I was having multiple panic attacks a day. I was having physical symptoms that were very bizarre in my head. I thought I was burnt out. Like I felt really like intense pressure, and I couldn't focus. It wasn't brain fog. I'd had brain fog before, but it was so intense. My face started numbing. I thought I was having a stroke. Like my arm went tight once. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was having very intense symptoms, and they started causing panic attacks. So I went to the doctors looking for neurological. I got CT scans, CAT scans. Well, that's the same thing. All the blood tests, MRI, and an MRI came back. I got an email response saying that I had a brain aneurysm. Just like from an auto generated results from my scan. And I freaked out because I thought something was really wrong. I never talked to a doctor, but I was like, oh my gosh. So I tried to stay calm. I was like, anytime I felt tension or, stress, I would avoid it to like because I thought my brain was going to explode. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It spiraled. Like, as you can imagine, I thought I was going to die if I got stressed. So I avoid it. And it got to the point where I was having panic attack after panic attack after panic attack. Everything I did, it was like causing panic attacks. And a week later, I couldn't stand it anymore. I emailed the doctor. I got the clear. Like they said, oh, it's just, nothing is wrong. Like it's just a result that shouldn't have happened. Like we shouldn't have sent you that. You're fine, whatever. It's within the healthy range. So I was like relieved, but I had built a neural pathway that was continuing the panic attacks. So, for example, anytime I drove over the same bridge that initially caused a panic attack, I would have another one. Anytime I sat down at my dining room table where I had an initial panic attack, I had another one. So my walls were closing in, even though I knew I was safe, even though I knew there was nothing wrong with me physically, but they were triggering. So I just kept having them. And then to answer your question, at that point, I realized all the stuff I was doing, the meditations, the calming myself down, the mental reframes, the avoidance, the walks, whatever, wasn't touching this. Everything the doctors gave me, that I got prescription drugs, I tried all this stuff. I wanted answers. And as you know, and you're a firm believer, when you're ready or when you ask, divine intervention happens. Mm-hmm. And I was curious. I was like, what is really causing this? What is the root? Because I'm not buying any of this pharmaceutical stuff or mainstream stuff anymore. It's not. And realized Michael Singer, who's an author, I went to see him a few times in person. He talked about samskaras, which are suppressed emotions, right? That we store them. That's the root. And that was the moment that changed for me. I realized I need to drastically change everything that I'm doing and approach this root issue full on. Like, don't stop until it's gone, like cleared. Like I want to excavate and release every single thing that's suppressed inside of me. And that was my mission at that point.
Wow. And the mind can get in the way of all of that. And so what I find so fascinating about you is that you've had all this mind control experience. You've been able to really learn how the mind works. And then you have this visceral experience where you're going to now suppress or get all these suppressed emotions out. And you have all this understanding about the mind. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't know enough about the mind, but yeah, this is amazing because I was obsessed with the mind, the brain, optimizing it. I used to actually coach people on how to optimize their brain. In fact, my website's still up there. I'm adjusting it, called Optimize Your Mind, right? And I told people all these tactics to optimize them, to focus better. And not that those things are wrong, but I went from the mind is the final frontier to no, it's not. Like I
Mhm.
had to let go of my mind. I had to let go anytime I was spiraling in thought, thinking too much. Because, like you said, the moment, and well, let's get a real example here. In the past, when I had anxiety, I would try to reframe it, try to think positive, try to meditate, right? Like I said, now, anytime I feel dread or anxiety, when I'm going through that process, I'm leaning into it. I'm literally like sitting, relaxing all the muscles in my body that are tense, because that tension is what's holding in the suppressed emotion. Relaxing everything. I'm not trying to control my breathing. I'm letting go of everything. And in the process, the mind is going crazy. The mind's like, this is a waste of time. What are you doing? How long do you have to do this? Like, you got stuff to do. Like, go do something else. This is so boring. Is this working?
Yeah.
All of this chatter. And a lot of us like listen to it because we believe we are our thoughts and our mind.
Mhm.
But I realized, and this is what meditators and yogis and spiritual leaders have known for many, many centuries, is that you are not your mind. And so I realized that the mind is a construct and I can watch it. Like my awareness is behind the mind, right? I'm not my mind, but I can watch it, and not just watch it, like accept it, but realize I am not any of those things.
Right.
And so it took a lot of sort of willpower to let go of my mind, to tell myself, stop listening to the mind and just feel all of those sensations, as uncomfortable as they are, because they're releasing, they're releasing, they're releasing. And it took some time to finally, everyone asks me, how do you know it's working? And I say, well, how do you know you're getting fit from going to the gym? You don't go work out one day and look in the mirror and you're changed. Like you do it for a week or two or three and realize, oh, it is working. You see it. That's the moment you believe it. It's the same thing with the emotions. You do it for 1, 2, 3 weeks, and all of a sudden you have a knowing that you're lighter, that things are gone, that you're not bothered by all the same things anymore. And that's the moment you can lean in even further.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people come to this realization, and I think this happened for you. We're achievers, right? We're taught that we need to achieve, that we're working towards a goal. And when we get to that place where we have the big house or the nice car or the great job or the whatever we have, many trophies, then we'll be happy and
Yeah.
we'll be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I know that's not what you found.
Yeah, I mean, you see all the trophies behind me. Those three are the US Championship trophies. I won my third one last year, last fall around this time. It was an amazing feeling, right? It didn't last all day. I was putting my trophy on the mantle at the end of the night, and I felt like I needed more. I felt like I was already preparing for next year. And I thought, and like, there's nothing wrong with that, then training again. But I realized I stepped back and I said, this never ends, does it? Like, I want to feel fulfilled and happy. Everything I'm doing to feel fulfilled and happy isn't lasting. And I was like, okay, yeah, we all know this, but whatever you're seeking externally will never last, will never be fulfilling. And so, again, Michael Singer brought this up, that the reason we're not always happy and feeling fulfilled and joyful in flow with life is because we're blocked. There is a wellspring of spirit, of energy, of chi, of prana, whatever you want to call it, inside of you that's blocked from preventing you from feeling fulfilled with everything that's happening in life, because we're shoving emotions in front of it and it can't flow. It's like damming up a river. And so I made it a mission to not seek happiness through external means. Not that I can't have a trophy and a house and money, but I'm going to free myself internally to feel happy regardless of anything that happens on the outside world.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know that you're teaching people now, you're showing people how they can get rid of their anxiety for good. And so you have a process that you can work through. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what that looks like?
Yeah, I give it in three parts because I really want to make this simple. Right? We don't need a complex process here.
No.
Yeah. And I took this from different people because I got a lot of genius from other people, but it was still incomplete. I wanted the whole picture. And so the first part is we need a fully regulated nervous system, or I call it an optimized nervous system. We get in the way. We as humans get in the way of everything, right? So what do I mean by regulated? What most people who are in this world are dysregulated. They're tense, they're holding in their emotions, they're frustrated, like with certain things, they're bothered by all this stuff, and they hold in all this stuff with tension. Their cells, their DNA are constricted, which holds in all this suppressed energy, emotion, right? So in order for emotions to flow and release all this stuff, we need to fully regulate, which means we need to have a relaxed, grounded nervous system, which means we have to get out of the way, really. I teach a process really simple where people lay down, and I did this too. And I guide people on how to relax very specific muscles, head to toe, head to toe, head to toe, head to toe, releasing decades of tension, just to allow your body to recondition and relax, to stay relaxed all day. It's not easy, but we need to get out of the way so the body can fully operate and heal. The body knows what to do. It's highly intelligent. There's an intelligence behind all of this, but we get in the way of it. So it's really getting out of the way through deep relaxation, letting go of the mind, letting go of the breathing techniques, letting go of tension. Once the body's regulating, it's doing a lot of work for you. And then the second step is what I call the unhooking method. So anytime you're in anxiety or whatever emotion, negative emotion, you're learning how to relax. You're learning how to let it. I basically teach people how to let it go and process out, which is very hard because, like you said, the mind gets in the way. So we go deep into that process. It's very simple, very profound. And what I tell people is when you release suppressed emotions, that's your suppressed potential. So think of it not like I need to just get rid of this stuff in my body. No, you actually want to release it, to integrate it, to expand your capacity. And then the third step is what I call catalyst merging. These are once you're at that stage, you're ready to release the biggest boulders of your life, the biggest things you're holding on to, which most of us know what they are. You don't have to know any of the memories that are suppressed either. You can access all of them without digging in the past through therapy. And I teach people that process because some of us are holding on to some really huge things. We've been abused, we've been betrayed, we've been embarrassed, all of these things, heartbroken. And we're the ones still holding on to that. So I teach people how to release all those boulders and all those rocks and pebbles and things that are damming us up. And if you devote yourself to this process, people find immense release within weeks or months and overcome anxieties, expand their capacity to handle more life, and have profound results.
Wow. And I know by looking at your website, I can see a lot of reviews and a lot of people that have found, oh man, so much relief from working with you. So, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I go really deep into this in a 12-minute video at releasepanic.com/free. So you can sign up, you get on my email list too. I just recommend people try this on their own. If you can't and need some accountability and you need a track to learn how to fully regulate your nervous system, I'm there to help. And I'm actually, in a month or so, I'm going to expand into a more thorough program too. So people can reach out. If you're part of Release Panic, there's a program there, but you'll get into this new program too, which is basically the same thing, talking about expanding into higher potential, which people not only want to overcome anxiety, but they want to expand to their highest potential. And we do that not through our mind, not through our will, but through releasing and letting go, allowing this divine flow to work through us, right? And it's all related. It's a magical process.
Yeah. And in the spiritual world, we all talk about this. We talk about the fact that your mind has control over these things, and this is what causes all of the issues. But sometimes it's really hard because we don't know how to work through it. It's like, well, I know that, but how am I supposed to, what am I supposed to do about it? Right? Because you're in it and you can't, it's like this process of trying to figure it out. If you had a guide, such as you, that has that, then I just think things would be a lot easier.
Yeah, we all need teachers at some point, certain stages, don't we? To sort of absorb their codes of wisdom and propel us higher. Ultimately, my goal is to allow people to not need me. I don't want to be your lifelong coach or guru or anything like that. I want you to be sovereign, because once you sort of learn, like you said, what to do, how do you let go of the mind, but also trust your intuition? Once you learn how to do that, you can be free and you don't need anyone other than the universe, God, life force to guide you, right?
Right.
And that's my goal for people.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. So there's one more little piece before we wrap this up. I really wanted to talk a little bit about forgiveness. This has kind of been like it's something that comes up with grief, and sometimes it can be so hard. And I know it's so important. And I know you had an experience with forgiveness. So I'm wondering if you could share that and then just tell us a little bit about how that helped you.
Yeah. 2022, so not too long ago, my grandfather committed suicide. And he was 90 years old, completely devastated us. Like, it was a complete shock. We would have never had any clue, any idea. And he didn't leave a note. He didn't leave any clues. It was just a complete shock. The only thing that we do know is my grandmother had some mini strokes and she was never the same that year. So we're wondering if, it was just too much for him. Regardless, at that moment, the person I was at that time was extremely angry, like not just angry, but full of rage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, life poked me in that moment and all the rage came out of me. I was so angry. Like, most people feel a lot of sadness and grief when someone dies, especially love. I felt a little bit of sadness, but most of my experience was just full on rage. And thought of, how angry I was at him, how he left the family devastated, what he left, the mess in the house, like all this stuff, how he left my grandmother, how could he do this? And for probably 2 months, I was fuming. Just, I couldn't handle it. And it was causing a lot of distress in me, causing arguments in the family, things like that. My friend, well, it was a kind of a divine story. She challenged me that moment. She said, "Do you still love him?" This was 2 months after the fact. And I was like, "I don't want to talk about it." And I wouldn't call her a psychic, but she was an intuitive, and she started to communicate with him. And I was like, "Okay, psychic lady, whatever, like, talk to him." And at the time, I was open. And she started hitting things on the nail, and I was blown away. I felt like he was actually there, and he was at peace, and he didn't like seeing me obsessed over this, and he still loved me. That night, I went to bed, I hit my head on the pillow, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to talk to him. And all I said was, "Grandpa, I don't agree with what you did, and I don't think I ever will, but I love you." And I meant every word of that. And in that moment, it was the most profound moment of my life, because the rage, I always say an elephant of rage, in that moment lifted off my shoulders. It was gone.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, the room changed, something changed. It got lighter in the room. I couldn't get angry. In 10 seconds, it was gone. completely dissipated. And I thought, okay, that's crazy. Like, I actually tried to get angry again. I thought of all the memories that triggered me about that. I couldn't get angry. I couldn't. I tried.
Yeah.
It was gone. And since that day, I've not been held an ounce of anger towards him or what happened. It was and yeah, it was quite shocking.
Mhm.
So talking about forgiveness, I have a different thought or perspective on forgiveness, because a lot of people think I could never forgive someone because of what they did to me. It's about righteousness. Well, here's my perspective on forgiveness is I believe forgiveness has nothing to do with right or wrong. Forgiveness is about forgiving our judgment of what happened, forgiving our perspective of what happened. Again, not about right or wrong, not about what they did, but we all operate in this world like this through our single perspective, right? This is why we're closed-minded and closed-hearted, some of us, right? And we all are to some degree judgmental. We see the world through our lens, but when you forgive, you crack open your heart and your mind, and you start. It's not about changing your mind, but it's about seeing the world through other people's shoes and eyes. That's it. To see a deeper, broader perspective, because this world's full of billions of people that see things differently than you. It's not about right or wrong. It is what it is. So it opens up your heart, it opens up your mind. And so it's also about freeing yourself of the suppressed emotions you're holding on to, the resentments, the angers. That's something you're holding on to, not that person.
Right.
And so I had a complete change. And at that moment, I made a list of everyone that bothered me, everyone that I wanted to forgive, and just day after day, I would just not all the time in person, but to myself privately, I would release that. And that's what I teach in the program too. How do you release that without the person in front of you, without using your mind? How do you release and forgive from the heart so that you're free of all these things that are affecting you, like the rage and resentment?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and it ties into the whole idea of compassion, and having compassion for others. And like you say, not dismissing what they did necessarily, but having compassion for them in that place and where they are.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Yeah. And the compassion is sort of, well, it is gained, not really gained, but open your heart and the compassion comes in, or the compassion is revealed, instead of like mentally, I need to be compassionate, because we can't do that through our mind,
Right.
right? Because we don't have the perspective yet. When you crack open your heart, you pour out that compassion naturally,
Right.
effortless, because you've cracked it open instead of like forcing yourself to think that way.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been amazing. Amazing. Is there anything else you want to share with everyone before we go?
I always like to give this little tidbit because people want to know how they can do this on their own or try, right? I recommend everyone listening to write down everything that bothers them in the next 24 hours. Like
Wow.
every little thing, big thing that you encounter that bothers you, every person, every thought that you have towards someone else or something, write it down. And why are you writing this down? Because those things, experiences, people are your portals to your higher potential. Meaning, every time something bothers you, an emotion arises. That's your portal to step through, to expand.
Right.
That will free you from your anxiety, because those are the things causing your anxiety and overwhelm, or emotions, those things that bother you. And that's your opportunity to, again, release the suppressed emotion, to increase your capacity to handle more voltage in life, right? To crack open your heart, to crack open your mind, and to expand. And so you have a choice at this point to write it down and go at it on your own. If you need some help and guidance, I'm there too. But those are your portals. That's the gateway. It's nothing mental that you have to do. It's all through the heart. And those are the actual practical things you can notice in your life that are opportunities for you to expand.
Beautiful. I love that. And I encourage everybody to check out your website, and I'll put the link in the description. And thank you again for taking the time and for just sharing all your wisdom. I think it's going to help a lot of people. Thank
I
you.
hope so. Yeah, thank you for having me, Angela. The questions that you give allow this to come forth. So what you do is very important. I hope you keep doing that.
Thank you. Thanks so much. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and bye for now.